We have even more stats about the meta now, so we can really see what's happening with the meta after the latest patch. In this video, I will show you 5 of the best Hearthstone decks right now, and we will look at the meta as a whole as well. So if you enjoy what I'm doing and you find it helpful, a like and a subscribe would really help. Don't forget you can also hire me for some Hearthstone coaching, and you can also check me out on stream. I will be live right after I upload the video. Now let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
Now we also have the latest patch as a time frame for the HS3 Played Premium, so we can really see what the meta is looking like. It's still pretty fresh and the stats are not populated enough to make any grand conclusions out of it, but still it's gonna give you a good idea of what you could be playing for some easy climbing. In top 1000 Legend, it seems like Pure Paladin, Aggro Mage and Evolve Shaman are all taking up the meta. But we can also see Frost Death Knight at top of the tier 2, which is kinda strange cause when we switch over to the decks you won't even see a Frost Death Knight out there. So take that with a grain of salt. Same can be said for Aggro Druid and even Kris Warlock, but they're definitely doing great from Diamond to Legend, so there's that. We can also see Miracle Rogue is still doing great, as well as Aggro Demon Hunter being the best performer right now for the class. Ping Mage is still okay, Spell Demon Hunter is also very good, and we also have a bunch of other at the bottom of tier 2, which are not super amazing. From Diamond through Legend, the situation is similar, but here Kris Warlock is actually tier 1, and I can say that's a fact. Imp Warlock is also very powerful and strong right now, and even Beast Hunter is still pretty good there. We also have Enrage Warrior a lot higher on the list here, and some other outliers like Silverhand Paladin, and even Shockspitter Hunter still is pretty good. When we go back to top 1000 and check out what the situation with the decks is, here's what you can see. We have Aggro Demon Hunter at the top with the best performing deck, and also Spell Demon Hunter without the quest anymore is looking pretty nice as well. Pure Paladin also looks pretty populated and pretty powerful, but also things like Miracle Rogue are actually still strong, even though the deck took some different approaches. Now we have Draka back in the deck, and for her to work at 5 mana, you definitely need your Mailbox Dancers as well. We also have Evolve Shaman looking pretty good, as well as Phylactery Warlock, even though this deck is very hard to pilot optimally, so be careful with that one. And also Kris Warlock is here as well. The others are just not worth mentioning. Starting off with the first deck on the list, this time it's gonna be Aggro Demon Hunter. And I can tell you this deck is actually very strong, and I even climbed Legend with it this season, before the nerfs, so it's definitely pretty powerful, and it's not at all hard to pilot optimally either. You do have to make some weird decisions with your Dread Prism Glaive and whatnot, but it's still just brainless aggro, so it's far from rocket science. Climbing with it shouldn't be too hard, and usually you end games before turn 7. Matchup wise, here's what it looks like, and Death Knights are not gonna be your friend, especially the Frost kind, because they freeze your face a lot, but I can tell you this is still pretty winnable for the Demon Hunter, especially if you know what you're doing. Aggro Mage is also a bit of a problem, again because they freeze a lot, but the rest is fair game. Mulligan wise, going first, Biblomite is always amazing because it's such a chunky turn 2. A good 1-drop like Trogord Vicious Slitter Spear is also great. Battleswarm Vanguard, especially if you already have your Dread Prism Glaive. And if you deem your hand fast enough, you might even consider things like Magnifying Glaive or even Sightless Magistrate, but be careful with the Magistrate because it draws for the opponent as well, so if they also enjoy playing fast, this will be helping them as well. Metamorphin is also something you might consider, but it's kinda hard to actually pull it off before turn 3 because you have to play the Fellspell on the turn you're playing this. But it's definitely not horrible playing 2 of these with a Fury on turn 3, so there's that. When on the coin, the situation is basically the same, and even things like Lady Steno become a lot more capable, because with the coin it's gonna be a lot easier for you to pull off some extra damage like that. And also don't be super greedy with Lady Steno, she's not supposed to be an OTK in this deck, she's just a good tempo play most of the time. For other good Demon Hunter decks, like I said, Spell Demon Hunter is looking pretty hot right now. And there's also a Relic Demon Hunter with a bunch of minions, which is also doing quite alright too. But all around, Aggro seems to be the cheapest and the fastest of the bunch, and it's pretty simple too. On the number 2 spot, last top 5 we talked about Pure Paladin, which is obviously the best performer for the class, but this time let's check out what Control Paladin is looking like after the patch. Not much has changed here, but we do have Mistress Smite back into the list, so you can have some great OTK potential after Cariel gets played. Mistress Smite is also great if you discover things like Righteous Protection, which sucks off the stats from the minion on the board and gives it to a random one in your hand, and if you're lucky enough, Mistress Smite can become very huge. With Control Paladin nowadays, you will definitely be able to punish a lot of aggro decks out there, which seem to be swarming the meta, especially from Diamond to Legend. So if Control is your thing, Control Paladin right now is pretty hot. Matchup wise, here's what it looks like, and things like Blood Death Knight and Ram Druid are gonna be problematic because they outvalue you, but also Big Spell Mage is not gonna be too fun either because they have way too many big boards. but the rest is pretty good. Mulligan-wise, going first, things like Bannerman, Sinful Sous-Chef, and Mugborn Servant would be your best bets, but also Kero Rome, Leviathan, and even Righteous Protector could make the cut, even though you might want to be greedy with the Protector later on, depending on the matchup. Order in the Court is also pretty nice to have, but be careful when you play it, because you don't want to be bricking your hand super early with it. When on the coin, the keeps are basically the same, but also things like Akani, as well as Bunker Sergeant, become a lot better. For the other Paladin decks, like I said, Pure Paladin is definitely hoarding the top. Silverhand Paladin and Dragon Paladin are also usable, but as you can see, the stats are just not as amazing. On the number 3 spot, let's talk about Miracle Rogue, which definitely took a very huge hit, but it's still actually very usable, even though it's a bit different from what it used to look. Like I said, now we have Draka, as well as Mailbox Dancers, instead of basically Maestra and the Gnolls, because that interaction basically is deleted now, and it looks like literally everything else is basically the same. Even though your locations lost their stealth, they're still pretty hard to deal with super early, but obviously classes like Priest and Hunter will have a lot easier time dealing with those big guys, with things like Shadow Word Death, or a well-timed Keen Eye Spotter with a Candle Shot. Matchup-wise, this is far from populated yet, so we're gonna have to wait and see how it pans out. And same can be said for the Mulligan, but still, Blackwater Cutlass, Potion Belt, Ghoulish Alchemist, Location, and even Draka will be very keepable for you. Going second, you could even keep things like Shadow of Demise, because getting an extra coin is kinda huge. And depending on your hand, you might even consider keeping Mailbox Dancer and Shadow Step if you have them both. For other good rogue decks, we also have variants with Astalor in them, and Thief Rogue is still usable, even though the win rate is far from what it used to be. On the number 4 spot, we can check out Unholy Death Knight, which definitely did receive a lot of support from the new patch, and now this is one of the best performing Unholy Death Knight lists out there. This new list is running things like Plate Grain, which is gonna give you some extra corpses. We also have Blightfang in here, as well as the buffed Battlefiend Necromancer with the new and improved 1-3 taunts. We also have Coroner in here with some freeze and silence for you, which can help you out in some clutch cases, and you can discover some extra discounted stuff from your visor. Grave Strength is basically Bloodlust on steroids, and it's a great way for you to finish off opponents fast. Matchup wise, it's not super populated just yet, but Big Spell Mage might not be your favorite matchup. For the Mulligan, going first, here's what it looks like. You want to be curving out with a good 1-drop like Peasant, or your Body Bagger. Blightfang also seems to be a pretty good opponent, especially against fast aggro decks. And the Deathbringer and Visor look pretty good as well. I'd assume Hawkstrider is also pretty nice, as well as your Arms Dealer. Going second, here's what it looks like again, and it's basically pretty similar, but it seems like Lord Marigar might also be something worth considering, even though the sample size doesn't support it very well. I'd assume you still want to be curving out pretty great for you to be considering an 8-drop with this deck though. For other good Death Knight decks, Frost Death Knight still seems to be holding its own, and Blood Death Knight is also very usable too. And on the last spot, we talked about Kris Imp Warlock on the last video, which is definitely the best choice from Diamond to Legend, but also Imp Warlock is looking like a pretty good substitute if you're missing some of the core pieces for Curse Lock. This deck again is basically same old Imp Lock from the past, and the game plan is still very simple. Curve out like a god, and finish the game around turn 5 or 6 with a big Shady Bartender or Imp King Rafam. You also have Astalor in here, which is still basically a single card with a game plan of its own, so it's still probably worth having. Matchup wise, Frost Death Knight is gonna be horrible for you because they freeze the board over a lot of the times and they have good AoEs, but also things like Evolve Shaman and Rogues might not be your favorite matchup. Ram Druid, however, is gonna be great for you. For the Mulligan, basically you're looking for your good early game imps, and if you already have things like Wicked Shipment, Impending Catastrophe can also feel great. Fiendish Circle and Imp Gang Boss are your best free drops. And Mischievous Imp is also pretty easy to curve out as a 4-mana 9/9 as soon as turn 4. When on the coin, you can even consider things like Vile Library, especially if you already have something like a Wicked Shipment, but also Grimoire Sacrifice becomes a bit more keepable, especially if you know that you're playing against an aggressive matchup. For other good Warlocks, Curse is still king, but also Phylactery is pretty usable, especially in top Legend, but the deck is very hard to play with, and the skill cap is super high, so I wouldn't really advise crafting something like this if you're not really familiar with the playstyle. For the classes we didn't mention, starting off with Druid, we have Aggro Druid at the top, but also Ram Druid is still pretty decent. It does seem like the meta is a bit too fast for the Ramp Armor Druid though, with the 30 list, so keep that in mind. For Hunter, Beast Hunter seems to be the best performer so far, but also Face Hunter is having some solid stats to back it up, and Shockspitter Hunter is still very much usable with above 55% win rate on all variants. With mages, Big Spell Mage is looking pretty solid right now, and I already showed you Aggro Mage in the last top 5, which is doing very good too. There's also this new Casino Mage out there, but as you can see, the stats are not supporting it too well. With Priest, Undead Priest is actually pretty solid too, and all of the support it got actually did help it have a 58% win rate deck list. We also have several not so good variations of the list, and we can also see Quest Priest still being usable at 52.6% win rate. In Top Legend you can also see things like Svalna Miracle Priest, but it's definitely a super hard deck to really play with, so I wouldn't really advise it. For Shamans, as you saw, Evolve Shaman is king for the class, but also Murloc seems to be usable too. And for Warrior, for now, Enrage Warrior is the only hope for the class to be good again, but also actually Quest Warrior is back with 52% win rate, but so far, controlling with Warrior is not really the way to go. So that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you wanna be playing in this new meta. If you found the video helpful and you're serious about Hearthstone, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.